Hello, I'm Dr. Hughes, and this is a short presentation, really an educational presentation, on the four major areas that are the focal points of the growth of any business. You may have received something in the mail in terms of a promotional item. Whether you did or not, this is an educational concept on business rather than dentistry. So let me explain what that means. My background is almost 30 years. I'm a dentist by trade, but 30 years of background in studying business, textbooks from Pepperdine University, UCLA, Harvard University, what have you. So what is the right business model for dentistry? Why is it that a dentist for years has what I call silent handcuffs that he cannot remove? The silent handcuffs are really a boundary that puts a practitioner in an 8 by 10 operatory for 25 to 30 years without any freedom to pull up and have leeway to have a better lifestyle. Mostly because there's a wrong business model. So I'm going to take you through a short presentation, an educational presentation. It's for every practitioner. My heart is on my sleeve for them. I've met thousands over the years. Last year I went to over 82 to 83 different offices for research, outcome studies, and case studies. The case studies are real people. They're like you. They're all over the country. So that being said, let's get going. What you're looking at here on the screen is a thing called the transition plan. And a transition plan for you or anybody has a different definition for you than it does for a guy in a different state or down the street. What does transition mean to you? Maybe it means more time with your family. Maybe it means more time to go golfing. Whatever the hell it means, how do you get there? How long have you been wanting to get there? Most people have some concept of what they want 2 years from now, 5 years from now, or what have you. But somehow they don't arrive. So listen well, the business technology or terms I'm going to tell you in this presentation will dramatically assist you. I've used them for years. I used them for my own family, my own business, my own dental office. It's now in the last, really the largest breakthrough was in the early 2000s that changes the business model where you work. So let's get started here. The first thing I'm going to talk about is how do we get these handcuffs removed? They are handcuffs. Now, what do I mean by that? If you leave your office, damn it, for more than 10 days or 2 weeks, you take a trip to Hawaii, do you know what's going to happen to you when you're there? You're going to think about a couple things without a question. I know, because I thought of them. Number one, if you're earning $80,000 a month in your practice, you know that the 2 weeks is going to cost you $40,000. That money is gone, and not counting the cost of the vacation, which is another $10,000. So you're out $50,000 to take off 2 weeks. Not maybe, you are. So that compels you to take vacations and time off around what society tells you to do. Well, that's interesting. What do I mean by that? And that means you're going to take off at Christmas time, New Year's. You'll take off at Memorial Day, an extra day here and there. Maybe you'll bite the bullet and go for a week. But every time you take off, it pulls you back into the office. How come? Because, damn it, you have overhead in that office that ties you and binds you to that 8 by 10 operatory. You have overhead, you have payroll, you have leases and loans, you have personal finances. So it pulls you to go back into this office, and when you take time off, you're a little bit resistant to do so. How do we change that? So that's what this presentation is about, is the four main focal points of growth of an office to change the business model so we can accomplish a transition. So let's take a look at it. So the first thing, there's four areas really of any practice that stops the leakage of revenue. We're going to talk about loss aversion. How do we stop things rather than how do we build things? So the first area is called call conversion. Well, wow, what's that? This is the new people coming into an office. Every business has two focal points, really, or two aspects that grow that business. The people coming in and the people being retained by that company, that business. I don't care what business it is. It could be Netflix, it can be Starbucks, it can be Nordstrom's, it can be iTunes. They're trying to get new consumers in and keep the consumers they have, called retention. And those are the two focal points. If we get new people in and we stop the damn leakage, then all of a sudden you can grow a business. The problem is that your patients coming in the front door are going out the back door. So let's take a look at, first off, the people coming into the practice. You're always going to get new patients, always. Yes, it's going to cost you. But let's take a look at why this is so important and why we train that call conversion expert called your receptionist at that front desk. So let's take a look at it. First off, the second area is of loss aversion is called case acceptance. They walk in, you sell them something. How much is lost because we don't have sales in the office? It's a team activity. They're already in there, so you might as well sell them and get a higher case acceptance. What's the next area? So these are the 4 points. The next area is called retention. This is where the patients are lost out the back door. In our industry, it's a 90% loss. Hear me well. A 90% of loss. Every 10 patients that walk in your front door, 9 are going out the back door. How do I know that? How many days of hygiene do you have? Write it down. Now, the next thing to write down is how many years have you had the same number of hygiene days? That's your retention. How is that possible? You've been open, you've had 4 days of hygiene for what, 8 years, 4 years, 10 years, 12 years, and it's never grown? Where are those patients going? So we're going to show you in a moment. The last area is actually overhead loss. So this is your payroll, your supplies. This is very easy overtime. These are the things that can get out of hand. If you don't know benchmarks, the loss is not in the 5,000, it's not 10,000, it can be in the hundreds of thousands in a year. Those 4 things can come about by having a plan. You will never get there to where you want to transition without a plan. Not maybe. You just won't get there. You'll have a concept of it after 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, or 10 years. The problem you have in accomplishing any plan to get these 4 things resolved so that you can build the practice that will actually remove handcuffs is, number 1, you have to have a plan. And why don't you have a plan? Or maybe you do have a plan. Because when you walk into this office on Monday morning, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you like every practitioner. On Monday morning you walk in and you're hit with a thing called noise. And noise is, the hygienist didn't show up because she got sick, or the assistant quit that day, or the crowd didn't come in from the lab, or a large patient cancels at 10 o'clock in the morning, your day sort of falls apart, and you miss a lunch hour, you get home late, and this noise, every hour by the hour, turns into a day. So the hours turn into the day. The days of a week turn into the whole week, and the weeks in a month turn into a month, and the months in a year turn into a decade. And there goes 5 years, 10 years, and it's a snap of the fingers. It happens really fast. So a plan is necessitated to get there. So number 1, you have to have a plan. Number 2, there must be somebody to execute that plan, and it's not you, the doctor. So let's go on, let's take a look. Let's take up the first item, which is call conversion. This is real short. I'm going to be real rapid here, so if you want, you can listen to this again, because I'm sort of motoring through this pretty rapidly. Call conversion is an unknown metric or benchmark or loss that is happening at reception. You already get patients, but the key today in today's market is the conversion of a new patient calling in. Let me repeat that. You'll get 10 calls in a week or 10 calls in a month. How many of those new patients calling get converted as a scheduled appointment, and how many are lost? That's the key question. How many are lost? And I'm telling you, the office manager, the doctor, the receptionist, they're missing something. They're missing business terms and business acumen, which is a skill to become an expert at this. So the first thing you have to know is the numbers. What are the damn numbers? So let's take a look at it. Here's some basic terminology that's in every business textbook across the country. Residual income, average transaction value called ATV, linear income, metrics, all these terminologies you must know to build a business. Now we focus on these, and we have online training that actually teaches you how to take these this nomenclature, apply it with some skills to your management staff up front, and all of a sudden you have a resolution to a plan that can be implemented. So let's take a look at, let's take one term here because of a limited time here. Let's take up ATV. ATV stands for average transaction value. Now you have to know something. Every single business in the world has an average transaction value, not just dentistry. If you walk into a Starbucks, the average transaction value is $6.04. For every person that walks in there, that's the average ticket item. For a nail salon, it's $65 to $75. Ask your receptionist. Go to McDonald's. You can find this online. The average transaction value for McDonald's is $4.75. Why is this important for your receptionist and your office manager and you, the doctor, to know this? Because the annual average transaction value in our dental industry is $1,622. Well, that's sort of important. Why is that? Well, before we go there, let's still look at one more term. So remember that every person walking into your office as a new patient in the first year is going to be an average of $1,622. Now, the ATV fluctuates from office to office, so yours may be higher, yours may be lower. It depends on how many services that you have. If you have Invisalign and endodontics and implants and periodontics, your ATV can be as high as $3,000. And that, my friend, is the future of dentistry, is the multidisciplined office. More ATV, just like Starbucks. How do they raise their ATV? Well, they put a glass window, sort of interesting, and they put a rope there, so you have to go through the rope, and you have to look at the damn glass window. And in that window, before you order your coffee, there's a cinnamon raisin bagel, there's a cake pop for your kid, there's a Ethos water, there's a breakfast sandwich. So you start picking items up, and then you get to the cashier and you say, I would like to have my coffee. Now all of a sudden, the average transaction value at Starbucks went from 65 cents to $6. Wow, that changes the business model. Same thing for your office. So let's go. Let's take a look at another term called COA, which is the cost of acquisition. Every business has a cost to acquire a consumer. For you, it's a new patient. You have an average in our industry. Every business has this. They find it out. Insurance companies do. Starbucks knows what it is. Car agencies, you name it. For dentistry, the average transaction value, or the average cost of acquisition, is $322 a patient. Every patient you get, this is the average in any metropolitan or suburb area across the country. That's about what it costs. Why are these two terms important? Well, look at this next slide. This is why we focus on these 4 points. The first point being call conversion. The dental average transaction value is $1,622. The cost of acquisition to get a new patient is right around $300 or $323. Okay, so if somebody calls your office and goes ring-a-ding-ding, what's the cost of a crown? How much is Invisalign? How much is an implant? Because the calls you get today are from very educated consumers, and they are called price shoppers and price questions. And your receptionist has to know how to do call conversions to get them in the appointment book. If you lose one person asking a price, look what happens. It's $2,000 for one lost patient in a month. Well, lose 5 or 10 of them. Well, if you lose 10 calls a month, which is really easy to do, most people have no concept of how many they're losing. Well, that's $20,000 loss in a month. Well, in a year's time, that's $240,000. In 10 years, it's $2.4 million. Uh-oh, this person called the receptionist is pretty damned important. In fact, she's very important. She's your single largest business partner for the life of that practice, because you will never see a person or a patient in that back operatory unless that new patient goes through that receptionist or that office manager, whoever's answering that phone call. So that being said, the next area we're going to tackle here is really short, and it's really the treatment coordination in the office. This is sales. There's an entire course on this. It's a focal point to get the team. The hygienist is a salesperson, the assistant is a salesperson, the doctor, if you have the doctor who is the sole salesperson, you'll never raise the average transaction value of that office. Your treatment acceptance is a key point. They're already coming in the office, whether it's 10 patients a month, 30 patients a month, or 60. The revenue loss from the hygiene returning patients and the new patients coming in the office is far more than you would ever imagine. So that training as a team and the team huddle in the morning in terms of educating everyone on how do you sell. So there's a sales course online that it teaches everyone how to go through the basic 4 laws of treatment acceptance. That's really what they're called. So how do you handle this? Well, it sort of gives you a real about the online training, the living daylights out of the treatment coordinator, because she's the focal point. Increase the reviews inside the office immediately and constantly. Your reviews are critical today because everyone on all your promotion will always go to your website, and the website will actually show the number of reviews. And if you've got 15, 20, 30 reviews, it's a focal point we go on to. You've got to get your reviews up to 150, 200, 250, and they need to be at a 4.5 or above, because people are going to choose or not choose you. And all your promotion points to a website. That's the yellow pages of today. And dramatically raise the new patient experience. This is a whole avenue where we have a protocol where every new patient has a series of really, I would say, high-end, iconic quotations from well-known people that go throughout the year to the patients. They're database mailers or patient mailers, one when a patient just comes in, one for their birthday. They're automated and they go out, but that actually keeps your retention, which is the next focal point we're going to cover here. This is the big one. This one here is the hygiene revenue. This is the loss. This is really what handcuffs the doctor. This one I have a passion about because this, if you change the business model, this dramatically increases the patient care in the office to the best in the world. You can never have any better patient care than if you have this type of program on your hygiene department. The Department of Hygiene is its own goddamn department. It must have somebody in charge of it. When we take clients on, we never take them on and waste their revenue or their time unless they have a retention coordinator. You can also call it a hygiene coordinator. That revenue will earn more revenue for a practice and have higher patient care than any dentist can ever produce. The hygiene department can outproduce any doctor on planet Earth. But that revenue is lost out the back door dramatically. So let's take a look at, give a really live example to an office I went to last year. This is a real live example. This following example is an analysis of metrics applied to a dental practice in Tennessee. The example that I'm showing you is actually present in 95% of every office I've ever been in the last 30 years. And I've been into thousands of them. I probably visited somewhere between 6,500 to 6,700 offices in 30 years. Last year, I think I mentioned I went to over 83 offices. I go for case studies and outcome studies. I look at numbers. I'm a numbers person. Like me, don't like me. We simply look at numbers. So this was his doctor and wife that arrived to Viva for, they got referred to us by somebody. I can't even remember what. It was very interesting, very talented, very skilled, and very high-end office. Before we do that, I'm going to cover some metrics or benchmarks on the hygiene department so that you know what these are. Otherwise, you can't quite follow the math, so I'm going to go pretty quick here. The average number of days that a hygienist works upon graduation is 4 days a week, which you can see up here. This is 4 days a week. They work at 48 to 50 weeks in a year, so they have about 200 working days. They see an average of 8 patients a day, and the average production across the country for a hygienist averages right around $1,500 a day. It can be $1,350 or $1,800. We have some offices at $2,200, but the average is around $1,500, and that's for a fee-for-service PPO type practice. If you're HMO, Medi-Cal, this changes quite dramatically. You'll go down to $700, $800 a day rather than $1,500 a day. So this is the average benchmark. So look at this bottom number down here. The average hygienist annually, if she's working 200 working days in a year, which is the average hygienist, and she's earning $1,500 a day, they'll produce $300,000 a year. That's your average. If they're not doing that, then there's something wrong with the management. Probably there's nobody in charge of that department. But let's walk through this example. So here's a practice. I asked these questions. I said, how long has your practice been open? In 14 years. How many operatories do you have? This is a large practice. 10 operatories. I go, wow. How many new patients do you see per month? 65 to 75. Okay? How many hygienists do you have? They have 5.5 full-time hygienists. At which point I sort of stopped because that is a incredibly well-run office. The number of offices that you see with 5 full-time hygienists is less than 3% of the entire nation, the entire country. So this office knows what the hell it's doing. So I asked the question, which is the next question here. I said, how many years have you had 5 full-time hygienists? Now that's a key question. And the wife answered and said, we've had 5 hygienists for at least 6 to 7 years. I said, without adding or losing? She said, that's correct. I said, okay. So just remember that, 5 full-time hygienists for 6 to 7 years. They didn't lose any and they didn't gain any. So it's pretty stable practice. In 2018, when I first met these people, they had just added 2 days of hygiene. So we didn't count that, but nevertheless. So here's the next question that I asked. I said, what was the average daily production of your dental hygienist? So she knew them. They were averaging 925 to 975 a day. We wrote them all on the board, like a chalkboard. And the next question, I just remember that, 925 to 975. Question number 2, do you know the metrics for the metrics for the hygiene daily production? In other words, what should they be producing? Now this office was a fee-for-service PPO type practice. And she said, no, I don't know what it is, but I think it's $1,000 a day. But I said, no, do you know what it is? She said, no, neither did the doctor. So I said, okay. So I said, so let's take a look at this, but here's what we actually lost. Their average daily production was $900 a day. The national daily benchmark is $1,500 a day. So they lost $600 a day in revenue times 5 hygienists. So every hygienist was losing $600 a day. So that's $3,000 a day lost times 200 working days. So there's $200,000 a year for 6 years. They lost $3.6 million simply by not knowing the benchmark or the numbers that should be being produced or not having somebody in charge of that department. Now, those numbers are staggering, and most people go, well, I don't have 5 hygienists, I only have 1, but let's take this one step further. Okay, this is a formula, which is a CFO, a chief financial officer, does this for any business. This is just business technology. And at the top here, what you're looking at is a growth formula. It's called an annual growth formula. We can do it for your office, any office. This is part of the planning for an office. This office was seeing 72 new patients per month on an average, every month. She had all the numbers going back 8 to 9 years. Remember, it was open 14 years. So we went back the last year, so they're seeing 72 new patients per month. So now let's take a look at how this practice should have grown. In January, if you look at this number here, 72 new patients, if they walk in the front door, are going to have their teeth cleaned. They're new patients. So how many days of hygiene is that? Well, if you look at the average hygienist, they do 8 visits a day. So if we have 8 hygiene visits a day into 72 new patients, that means we'll have 9 days of hygiene, new days of hygiene in January of 2020. So, okay. So if we take, so that means 9 new days. So let's take that 9 new days and let's extrapolate this 6 months down the road. Okay, so 6 months later, those 9 days, if we pre-appoint them, like most offices do, and we want to build our hygiene department, we're going to lose about 45% of those patients. Not maybe. This is if you're real good and have a protocol and a system in place to build this department. So that 9 days, if you take a look at this, the 9 days is going to go to 5 days, no matter how good you are. But you can keep 5 days, that's okay. Now, in June, however, that 5 days is from the earlier 6 months. But in June, we have 72 more new patients as an average every month. So there's 9 more new days in June. That means in June there's 14 new days of hygiene that we've just added to this practice, if they didn't lose all of them. Okay, let's go forward 6 more months. We're going to look at an annual growth formula for 1 year. So this 5 days that originally started at 9 days, in 6 months from now, we're going to pre-appoint them for their 2 visits a year. That 5 days is going to go to 4 days. I'm being a devil's advocate. We're going to lose 55% of every person that came in a year ago. And this 9 days that came in June is 5 days. So remember that in December, like every month, we have 72 more new patients. So we have 9 new days. So in 1 year, this practice that I just interviewed, it has 18 new days of hygiene every single year that they have an average of 72 new patients. So they've been seeing over 70 patients per month for over 6 to 7 years. So one full-time hygienist, by the way. A hygienist works 4 days a week, 4 weeks in a month, 16 to 17 days a month. That's a full-time hygienist. How much, let's take a look at the next slide. You'll get the math on this. I went back 6 years because they've been seeing 70 to 75 patients for over 6 to 7 years. They've not added one hygienist, not one hygiene day in 6 years. So 6 years ago, when they were seeing an average of 60, 70 new patients a month, they should have added one full-time hygienist. They should have added $300,000 that year. One full-time hygienist. $1,500 a day, 200 working days, $300,000. The next year in 2014, they should have added a second one. That means they would have had $300,000 from 2013 and another $300,000 from 2014. They would have earned $600,000. And in 2015, it would have been $900,000, and then $1.2 million, $1.5, $1.8 in 2018. So in 6 years, this office, which is a well-run office with 5 full-time hygienists, they lost $6.3 million, not knowing how they were losing the patients. Now, in the same time frame, let's do the math really quick. Get a piece of paper out. This is a simple drill, and then we'll be done here. They're seeing an average of 70 patients per month. So write that down. Write down 70. Multiply that times 12 months in a year. So 12 times 70 should be 840 patients. So write down 840 patients per year. Now multiply that times 6 years. 6 times 840. How many patients is that? Well, that's about a little over 5,000. Yet not one new hygienist was added in 6 years. Where in the hell did they go? And that is the Viva system. That is what we stopped the leakage on. The leakage is massive beyond belief. The revenue loss that you cannot see, it's invisible. We've exposed it. We know where it's at. We know the math on it. So it's critical. There's a protocol. There's probably between 11 to 13 forms that are put in place. You train a hygiene coordinator, and all of a sudden you're on your road to transition without a doubt. So how do we do this? We refocus the practice on a thing called wellness. It's a wellness program, a wellness practice. It increases dramatically the entire ambience of the office, and it increases retention. The new patient experience and the wellness program that we install into an office, which is with signage and database managers and what have you, really, I can't even explain it to you. You'd have to see it in full. You'd have to see all the videos and what have you on it. The last area, which is area number 4, and this is the overhead loss. We give benchmarks on this so you know. It's really easy in an office to save $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year by putting in a thing called financial control or a controller. There's simple things on controlling supplies, lab fees, overhead, overtime. Really simple to do, but important over a long period of time. And this transition is what breaks these handcuffs. How do we break the handcuffs? How do you spend more time with your family? Those are the 4 areas. The 4 areas of patient loss of income is low call conversion, treatment acceptance, Retention is the largest one in overhead loss, and that's done really with a series of online training. It's multiple. There's 60 to 80 videos. There's 7 courses they do, but it's all done in the office because you can't afford to send them off anywhere. There's a coach that takes them through everything, but it's pretty simple to do. The analysis we're trying to do, we're trying to stop the loss that you can't see. We're simply going to expose it. That comes about with a 5-year plan, or I call it a transition plan. It's not really 5 years. It could be 1 year, it could be 2 years, it could be whatever it is for that doctor, depending on the size of the office. That being said, I can tell you that the aspect that we're really focused on is how do we take the practitioner that is bound for 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and he's trying to do transition towards something. You have to define that transition. We take that transition and we put it into really about a 24 to 32 page plan, and that plan becomes your Bible. And that plan is really what gets you from point A to point B. It's nominal in terms of cost. Find out what it is. We hope to see you. I hope this has been educational for you. There's a lot more to learn, a lot more exciting things that are really over the top, things you've never seen before, things that are very methodical. We put in systems, and systems is the only way you can grow something. And it has to be with a plan, and it has to be with somebody who can execute that plan. Hope to see you soon. I'll see you in the next video. Good evening. See you then.